So, I mean, each cloud vendor has got, something which is unique to them, something which is best in them, right? It could be in terms of security, it could be in terms of pricing, it could be terms of, comfort or ease that they have brought, into their cloud, right? So this is the main benefit wherein you get the best of the breed, right? And you need to choose the optimal cloud computing environment for depending on the workload that you're working on, or that you want to migrate onto the cloud, right? And the advanced or the next level of cloud is that you should be able to freely move freely between one cloud to the other, right? So there should not be any lock-in. So that's the open platform the cloud is heading towards. Okay. And definitely when it comes to cloud, everybody look at cost because they claim they are cheaper, right? They claim they are cheaper, but when you actually start using it, and if you miss on certain basic architecture level, sanity checks or hygiene checks, you may end up paying for more, right? So when it comes to hybrid cloud, you need to be very specific about the architecture that you are developing, right? The services that you're using from one cloud over the other, right? And how you're designing the whole architecture, right? So you need to be very, very careful in that. Any questions so far before I move on to the next slide? All right, I'll move on to the next slide then. See, when cloud came into the market, right, it was very traditional, very basic, right, wherein you were extending your private computing network onto the cloud, right? You were doing more of lift and shift. If you have 10 servers on-prem and they are dying, their licenses are about to expire, and you do not have a capex, you just do lift and shift and move on to the cloud. So this is how it started. Maybe if you are running out of storage, since storage is cheaper there in the cloud, you go ahead and move your storage to the cloud. So this is how people started using cloud, right? But when we talk about I mean, this was the scenario when actually cloud started, right? But now the things have changed, right? So and now people are using sophisticated middleware to integrate cloud resources across the environment, right? And even in the traditional environment, this thing was being used, wherein there was a middleware between your on-prem and the cloud network, which is just integrating the resources just to keep them running as one data center or as one infrastructure, right? So it was there in the traditional network, traditional cloud architecture rather, and it is now as well, right? It is currently here in the modern architecture as well. We're going to talk about modern architecture later in this slide, in the next slide, right? And so, I mean, when we talk about connecting infrastructure to the public cloud, by the I would say, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Can you please confirm? Okay, because I just got a message that your internet is not stable, so I thought of checking. Thank you for confirming.
Yeah, turn off your Netflix.
Okay, so this is sorry.
Turn off your Netflix.
Okay. Oh yeah, I've just done that. Okay. Actually, I didn't want to miss my favorite series. Okay. Uh, so moving on to the next slide. This slide also talk about uh, I would say traditional hybrid cloud architecture only, right? And herein, there are several use cases that we can talk about on this particular slide, right? When it comes to traditional hybrid cloud architecture, this this when people used to migrate their workload to cloud to meet the security and regulatory compliance. Okay, because of any reason, because their uh, data center is dying, they don't have enough capex, so there are a different reason why they were, shifting from uh, on-prem to data center. Okay, and just give me a sec, please. So the same reason they were uh, migrating their workload from data center to cloud to achieve the scalability, right? To like for rapid adoption of new technology, because on cloud you get uh, software as a service solution. You get you can even integrate these solution into existing application without provisioning new on-premises infrastructure, right? And whenever you want to like enhance legacy application, you can use public cloud services to improve user experience for existing app, or maybe you can extend to the new device, right? So these are the use cases why like that were there in the traditional hybrid cloud architecture environment, right? And uh, the the one major one was VM migration, right? Wherein uh, uh, they used to do lift and shift with their existing on-prem workload onto the virtualized public cloud infrastructure to reduce the on-prem footprint, right? And the best part with it is, you can scale it as required, right? Without any capex, right? So it's a pay-as-you-go model, right? So that was the advantage that they were getting in the traditional hybrid cloud architecture model, right? And definitely that you optimize your resources well in cloud, and there's a cost saving as well, right? And now I'll move on to the next slide. Herein we're going to talk about modern hybrid cloud architecture, right? So this architecture is focused less on physical connectivity, the way we used to have it in traditional cloud architecture, right? And it focused more on portability of the workload across all cloud environment. Remember, I told you in the earlier slide that uh, your workload should be portable, so that you can switch from one cloud vendor to the other cloud vendor, right? If like each cloud vendor has got its own specialty, right? So uh, when it comes to running Windows workload, Azure is the best, right? And let's say you started with AWS, but now you found AWS to be costlier for running Windows workload, right? So if your workload is portable, you can anytime port it from one vendor to the other, that is AWS to Azure, right? And get the savings, right? Any questions so far? you know, this hybrid cloud environment, right? Automation is the key, right? You need to automate the deployment of your workload, right? So that, it is portable, right? And once it is created, right? You don't need to change it if you are moving from one cloud vendor to the other cloud vendor, right? And herein, microservices architecture, play a very important role, right? Because it breaks down into smaller, loosely coupled, reusable component, right? That focus on specific business function, right? And you also make use of cloud native technology, right? Which make it, very reliable, and very consistent, right? And you can deploy it, I would say, as per like deploy it on your preferred cloud vendor infrastructure. Okay, so when we talk about this automation and portability, right, container plays a very important role, right? uh, Only the application code, right? And the virtualized operating system dependencies that are required to run it, like libraries and other things, right? We're going to talk about it in detail in the subsequent slide. So when we talk about hybrid cloud architecture, edge computing also play a very important role, right? Because there are cases wherein your I would say your on-prem infrastructure does not have a stable connectivity, right? And you need to do some high-end computing on-prem, right? And you don't have a good bandwidth or connectivity with the cloud, right? This is where edge computing play a very important role, right? Basically, it improves the global application performance by moving workload, right? And the workload is really close uh, to to where the actual computing gets done, right? So when it comes to edge computing, uh, you know, you you have your I mean, now every cloud vendor, provide edge computing facility wherein you're moving workload and data closer, very really close to the uh, on-prem network, right? And this is where the actual computing is done. And whenever you get internet connectivity, the data get transferred from on-prem to the cloud, right? So if you have unstable connection, and I mean, it can also survive that unstable connection, I would say. Okay. Any questions so far? Yeah,
I'm good.
Neil has a question. Can we talk about challenges of true portability between cloud and what the path forward may look like? I have that covered in subsequent slide. We can talk about it. Not a problem. Okay.
Great, thank you much.
Thank you. Like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to modern hybrid cloud architecture, this containerization plays a very important role, right? And when it comes to container orchestration platform, Kubernetes is the best, right? Using Kubernetes, you can actually automate the deployment of application across the cloud environment, right? So it's an open source thing, right? And you don't need to worry about, you know, changing the code frequently. You don't need to worry about have everything packaged as one, which is really portable, right? And you can, port your workload from one cloud vendor to the other, one for one application workload from one vendor to the other. Okay. So this way you can have, a single operating system across all the environment. That's not because it's Kubernetes, right? It's open source. You don't need to worry about, the underlying platform or underlying hardware rather. Okay. Yeah. As if you look at point number 2, it says a standard operating system let developer build any hardware dependency into the container, right? So I mean, uh, it, it's hardware agnostic, right? If you use container, right? And when it comes to you know cloud native development, uh, these when we talk about these monolithic application, right? It can be broken into business focused small chunks, right? That can be run anywhere and reused within a variety of applications. Okay. Any questions so far? I would like to take a pause here just to check if anybody has any question.
Looks like Margot just put a question in the chat. Could you compare microservice and serverless?
Yeah, when we talk about serverless computing, right? It's like we are not making use of any VM or uh, any I would say any compute function, any dedicated compute like EC2 etc. Right? Basically, we make use of Lambda when we talk about AWS, and when we talk about microservices, uh, it has I would say uh, very I would say broad scope ranging from queue services, pub sub model, and all those things. So that also come into picture, right? So wherein you break your application into different parts and all those things. Yeah. Does it help?
Yes, thank you. I noticed that you talked, after you mentioned Kubernetes and containers quite a few times, and so I was just wondering how serverless fit in there, or, or, or if it did. Yeah, thank you.
So, okay, when we talk about Kubernetes and all, right, it make your code portable. But when we talk about that means that you can switch from one cloud vendor to the other, right? And when we talk about these serverless architecture, these are still cloud dependent. Like I'll give you an example. We have Lambda, which is serverless computing, which is basically mainly run in AWS only. It's AWS native, right? You cannot use the same service there in Azure. Azure has got its own service. Likewise, Google has got its own service. Okay,
Oh,
does it
that
help?
yes, yes. So the serverless is not portable the way that the containers
Yes,
are.
yes, you're right. Okay, container make it, you know, uh, container make your workload so portable that you don't need to worry about hardware. You don't need to worry about which hardware it is running on. It could be any hardware. It could be on-prem hardware. It could be cloud hardware. So that's the beauty of containerization. And it's like it's all open source when it comes to Kubernetes and all. So yeah, and it is the main component of I would say hybrid cloud architecture. Okay. So these are the general benefit that you get from hybrid cloud platform, right? Ranging from yes, definitely, your developer productivity will improve, right? And so on. Like it's kind of very general. You have infrastructure efficiency because you do not you are not depending on just one cloud provider, right? And you have this ease of moving from one cloud provider to the other cloud provider, right? And uh, there are certain I mean a situation wherein one cloud vendor is not meeting the compliance or the security guideline, which is the chances are very low because all the three major cloud vendors are meeting almost all the regulatory compliance and security requirements around the world, right? But in some country, one cloud vendor may have an edge over the other when it comes to regulatory compliance, right? So this is where you have the freedom of choosing your preferred cloud vendor over the other, which is not meeting the regulatory compliance, right? So when it comes to overall business, yes, your workloads and your business and all that actually accelerate in the cloud, right? So now we're going to talk about multi-cloud, right? Herein, we make use of two or more clouds, right? And it could be any mix, Uh, it could be, IaaS from one, PaaS from the other cloud vendor, right? Maybe SaaS from the third cloud vendor, right? You may consume like an example, like as it is mentioned in the slide as an example. You may consume email from one vendor, let's say Microsoft, right? You can consume CRM from another vendor, right? Maybe SAP or maybe Salesforce, right? And you can use the IaaS from Google or IBM. I mean, any mix is possible, right? Depending on the services, these services that are meeting your requirement, right? And uh, your business, it is all governed by your business requirement, right? So that's the key, right? So if you are really into uh, infrastructure as a service kind of workload, so you will accordingly choose your preferred cloud vendor, and same goes for PaaS and same goes for SaaS. Okay. Moving on to the next slide, herein we will talk about multi-cloud versus hybrid cloud, right? As the name says, multi-cloud. Herein you get variety of cloud providers, right? And you know you can each cloud, I mean, whatever workload that you have got, it may reside in its solo, right? But it does not prevent it from interacting with other cloud in a hybrid environment, right? So as I took the example in the earlier slide, that if PaaS is something which is really good with one cloud vendor, you can go ahead and take that service, right? It may work in solo, right? It uh, but yes, it can be connected with other cloud vendors as well, right? So that is all about multi-cloud, right? And when we talk about hybrid cloud environment, uh, it's a normal cloud environment wherein you have just your data center and one cloud, just one cloud, right? Instead of having multiple cloud vendor, you just have a dependency on one. So every technology has got its own pros and cons, right? And so does multi-cloud has got its own pros and cons, right? Uh, the the pros are that you inherit the flexibility on of the cloud, right? Uh, that that ranges from capex, that you don't need capex, but you just need opex, right? And uh, you can mitigate risk better in a better way in when you're using multi-cloud, right? Because you have best of each cloud, right? You can optimize them as per your requirement, okay? And you can uh, you can ensure yourself that you're meeting the compliance level depending on the country that you are running your clouds in, right? And since you are using multi-cloud environment, right, there is no vendor lock-in. That's the key, right? You are not driven by any one vendor. You're not dependent on any one vendor for technology. You can best out of any top cloud vendor, right? Which you have access to. Okay, and this is the major pros of multi-cloud, right? And you get the access to the technology. Okay, when I say access to the technology, I mean to say that like I've mentioned earlier, that each cloud has its own uniqueness, right? So you inherit that technology benefit, right? And you get access to the new innovative technologies as well, right? Because again, the reason remain the same, right? And you can always mitigate the risk as well, uh, because you're not dependent on one cloud provider, right? Here are the cons. When we talk about cons, right? The only limit, like I would say, the only limitation that I can think of is the uh, management tool, right? Because each cloud vendor has got its own set of management tool, right? And then you need to take care of data transmission between, between different vendors, and then you also need to be highly alert about security protocols, right? You need to ensure that when these clouds are talking to each other, they are no issues with the security protocols, right? They are they are not impacted by, like, all the application in different clouds are working in a secure manner. Okay. Uh, yeah, definitely. When we talk about these multiple cloud, at times it becomes difficult to manage them, right? Because depending on your application, right? So this is one of the cons here for multi-cloud environment, right? Uh, and then you need to switch between one dashboard the other to the other, right? Uh, because they may have different interfaces, rule and procedures, right? And uh, uh, you they may have different procedures to migrate, to access, to export the data. So you all, when you talk about multi-cloud architecture, you need to take care of all these small things, right? And you need to adopt the microservice architecture, right? That's the key of multi-cloud, right? Any questions so far?
Hey, Gaurav. Looks
Yeah.
like Rick says in the chat, it's very difficult to manage multiple clouds and to be remotely good at all versus very good at one is key, especially given the sensitivity of your workloads. That's a good comment.
Sorry, say it again.
Oh, in the
Okay.
chat, Rick Austin says that it's very difficult to manage multiple clouds and to be remotely good at all versus very good at one is key, especially given the sensitivity of your workloads.
Yes, I agree with this statement. But when we talk about, like it all depends on workload, right? And the business requirement of any company or any customer, right? Uh, because when it if somebody doesn't want to get locked into one vendor and get driven by them, right? As I say in the beginning of the session, right? They claim that cloud is cheap, but in the real world, it may not, as economical as they claim, right? And this is where multi-cloud play a very important role, right? So because cost is also one of the important deciding factor when it comes to migrating your workload onto the cloud. Definitely, there is no capex in cloud. It's all opex based model. But when at times, when you do the calculation, cloud seems to be expensive affair, right? And this is where you may make up your mind that you don't want to get logged into one vendor. However, you want to get the best from each vendor. So it all depends on workload. Rick, do you agree, Rick?
I guess to a degree, I agree.
Yeah, it all depends.
I think that if you're a large enough organization to where you have so much compute and it has different ingress and egress requirements and things like that, like for example, in AWS, all incoming data is free and all outgoing you pay for. If you had a lot of data going out, that may be a thing that you would consider.
Yes.
But I would also suggest that unless you're really good at abstracting yourself away from your cloud vendor, with Kubernetes, Rancher, or whatever the mechanisms are, and you've figured out a way to secure all that stuff and not drive yourself nuts trying to keep up with all your compliance frameworks and audits and that kind of thing, that just going to multiple clouds thinking that you're either locked in or not, I think that's almost a fallacy to some degree, because you're locked into some technology somewhere, no matter what you do, right? So I worry a bit that if you spend a lot of time abstracting yourself away from all the goodness of the cloud, a cloud vendor, for example, and you're not optimizing towards it, then you're obviously not saving money because you're not optimizing towards that cloud vendor and getting smarter at how to use that cloud vendor and their technologies to lower your costs of operations and ensure a high level of security and those kinds of things. Then I guess it is a series of trade-offs at the end of the day. But I'm not convinced. I guess it's just my opinion. It's my personal opinion. I'm not convinced that keeping yourself at arm's length with every single vendor just so you don't feel like you're locked in really buys you anything at the end of the day. Yeah, the economics just don't seem to work out. At least as far as I've added them up.
Okay, when it comes to cloud, Rick, it's they are introducing new services each day, every day, right? And every cloud vendor claim that they're the best, right? Be it Microsoft, be it Google, be it Amazon, right? So I would say that the cloud vendor who is more into open source, right, gonna win the race, right? Because that cloud provider will provide platform agnostic, I would say some open, like that you can run your workload using open source environment, right? So
yeah, I understand that, and I'm not trying to be combative. I actually this hybrid, the notion of a hybrid cloud is important. I think we will find ourselves in these situations quite a bit. What I worry about is what is our motivation? Our motivation is primarily to deliver value to a customer as quickly as possible and as cheaply as possible, with the security umbrella wrapped all around that. And ignoring that, for a technical, I'll say, science experiment where we think one of the vendors is going to raise their prices, or if they're going to do something, at the end of the day, what was the cost of that abstraction? The cost of the abstraction was not getting the value, not sucking all the value out of the cloud that you could. There may be security things that might be problematic because you've tried this abstraction thing across some very complex infrastructure, and the list goes on and on. So while I agree that it's a thing and we need to address it, I would also just caution that what is our primary motivation? Primary motivation is building products for customers that they love, they're highly secure, and we do it as efficiently as possible. And abstractions are it's an expense. It's time spent trying to make things work at scale. Yes. In this kind of random environment.
Yes, you're right, Rick. So that's the reason, this, I would say, this is where, containerization and Kubernetes and all those open source things play a very important role, right? So it make, your application, not very much dependent on the hardware or OS, right? So this is where it plays a very important role. Yeah, but yeah, in order to get the best of the best from one cloud vendor, you need to use their native services and optimize in their own environment, right? But everything comes at a cost. So this is very very I would say tricky topic, wherein you need to manage or balance or juggle between a lot of services, right? I would say components, right? It could be cost, it could be technology, it could be security, right? So yeah, there's a lot of give and take, yeah, and you need to design and think accordingly. Yeah, you're right.
I think the same concept can be abstracted to Microsoft 365. I mean, you go to the 365 console, they just try to land grab at everything. They're doing Stream, which is the YouTube. They're doing Power Apps. They're doing Dynamics. They're doing Lookbook. They're camped out everywhere just to essentially stake their land and their territory. Some of it's half baked, and it's may not be ideal. And your concept of the best of the best is compelling, with the use cases that you're talking about. So yeah, it's I think it's a push and pull, and it's a tightrope that you kind of have to walk in terms of, do you want the best of the best, or do you want to sometimes have to sub-optimize so that you get uniformity? And then cost comes into play, quality comes into play, and there's products out there that kind of make having this hybrid model a little easier. Like let's say Okta for identity management, so that you can get the best of the best in terms of apps. I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of integration and making things play well with each other. But I think it's going to be a road that we're going to be constantly trying to cross. Do we stay within our lane, or do we, like you said, Rick, experiment? This laboratory experiment in terms of trying to get the best.
Yes, yeah, you're right. So there was a question that was being raised by, let me check the name. It was by, there was a question raised by Neil, wherein he requested if we can, talk about the challenges, that can come, challenges of true portability between the cloud and what path forward may look like, right? So I have a slide. It's in the other deck, right? Just give me a minute, please. Let me share that. And it actually talk about, what are the things that you need to, take care of, when you're talking about migration to cloud, what mixing and matching migration approach that you can, take to get the best, right? Just give me a sec. Let me switch on to the other deck. Give me a sec, please. Please confirm if you can see it now.
See it now, portability.
Yeah. Is it visible now?
Yes, it's looking good right now.
Oh, okay, cool.
And thank you. This does speak to my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So when we talk about portability, right, and there are a lot of limitation that you may come across, right? Uh, an application might be portable to a different environment with minimal changes, right? But it doesn't mean that application will perform equally well in both environment, right? Because definitely, there is differences in networking infrastructure, underlying compute. You never know, I mean, there is a machine which has got, AMD processor, and it has got different memory, right? So, I mean, no two cloud will have the same machine, right? They will have a different machine with different configuration, right? So definitely, there would be a challenge that, even if you have, used Kubernetes and made your workload portable, that it cannot guarantee or it cannot ensure that, it's gonna work in a very same fashion, that it is working on-prem or on one cloud, and it's gonna work in a similar fashion into the, like in the other cloud, right? So definitely, it also requires moving of data, right? Which also require a lot of time, effort, and budget. As Rick mentioned, like in one of the conversation, one of the point that he made was that, definitely, it will require, time, effort, and budget to move the data, to ensure that, security of the cloud, whenever you're moving it from one cloud or to the other. So these are all constraints, right? Because you need to relook the security aspect, the compliance aspect, right? Whenever you're moving your workload from, from one cloud vendor to the other. And same goes for, load balancer. Though we have, application load balancers, network-based load balancer, they claim that they work in the best way, right? But it may not meet our requirement, right? So accordingly, we need to tune our workload, or accordingly, we need to tune our architecture. Does it help?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for the follow-up. I really enjoyed the conversation you and Rick had earlier. I really like the idea of, as Rick mentioned earlier, about trying to leverage as much efficiency as you can from a single cloud, and certainly see the advantages to that. At the same time, I remain concerned, like most everybody else is, about being locked in some way. You can't move in the future. So it's quite a balancing act. Thank you very much for following up there.
Thank you. So I'll switch on to the earlier slide deck. Just give me a sec. Any other questions so far while I'm switching on to the previous deck? Because we are almost over, and we would like to, put this, like, we want to keep this time for question and answers. I mean, if you guys have any question, you can ask. Just one or two slides are left, which need to be covered. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
I see your Zoom screen.
Oh,
Yep, I see
is it
multi-cloud.
visible now? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for confirming. So now we're going to talk about like in the subsequent slide, we will also talk about other challenges, right, which are also there in this deck. We were on this particular slide. So when we talk about multi-cloud architecture, we need to be very careful when we are planning it, right? And we need to have a vision, right? We need to ensure that, we should design an architecture that should facilitate the ability to scale, to make changes, to make make upgrades, in future, right? Because cloud is evolve, like new services are being introduced every night and every day, right? And new technologies are getting introduced, right? So we need to ensure that our architecture should not constrain this ability of of scaling, of making changes, right? And we need to also consider the factor, where the data will reside, right? Who will have access to it, from where. We need to consider all these security aspects as well, right? And the most important thing is that we need to take into the account the API format, right? Because it plays a very important role uh, uh, when it comes to multi-cloud, right? We need to ensure that all the API formats, all the APIs are connecting properly, and encodings are correct for each cloud and all, right? And we need to keep our data closest to the customer, right? And uh, we need to ensure that the spread of our application, our database is very close to the customer, just to ensure that there's no latency, right? And we need to ensure that it is easy to access, right? Because we are talking about different vendors where they will have different interfaces and all those things. So we need to ensure that it should be easy to access, right? And there should be less latency. This now we have a couple of slides that like this particular slide rather talk about challenges, right? Challenges related to integration, challenges related to portability, interoperability, latency, regulations, right? So we need to consider all these things, right? Whenever we think of multi-cloud, right? So starting with integration, we need to ensure that uh, we can operate optimally, right? And there should not be any difference when it comes to running a workload between two separate clouds, two different clouds, right? So we need to ensure that our APIs are working correctly, right? Containerization is there, right? Security protocols are functioning fine, right? And whenever we are moving from one cloud to the other, the same set of security that we should get, right? Uh, 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 no matter which cloud we are running our workload on, right? And uh, the same goes for interoperability, right? You should have the ability to migrate component to more than one cloud without having to make major modification, right? This is where Kubernetes play a very important role. And once the component are moved onto the cloud, you may face challenges of interoperability within your own system, right? So this is one of the possibility. And when we talk about latency, definitely, your data uh, should be, closer to the user, right? Very, very close to the user. Uh, and definitely, then there are, privacy regulation that you need to take care of. You have you need to ensure that depending on the industry that you're working in, it could be medical, financial, uh, uh, other industry, right? Each industry has got its own regulation, compliance that you need to meet, right? So these are the challenges that you need to take care of whenever you talk about a multi-cloud environment. No, then there is security, right? You need to ensure that your protocol, your security solution is properly implemented whenever you're switching from one cloud vendor to the other. When it comes to policies, you need to ensure that uh, you know uh, access is given, on the on the business basis, on the need basis, on no one should get any extra privileges. They should get privileges only to the work that they are responsible for, right? And definitely, some sort of security customization is necessary, right? You need to monitor your environment at all the time, because you're checking, different cloud environment, different cloud vendors, right? And you need to ensure that data is accessed properly. There are uh, uh, there are no security vulnerabilities. Everything is addressed when it comes to security, right? So these are the general things that you need to take care of. And in this slide, we're going to talk about strategy of multi-cloud, right? So you need to have a strategy so that you can maximize the benefit and prevent complexity that may come later in the later stage when when you implement something new, or when you make change in your workload later at a later stage, right? So you need to have a strategy to ensure that you're getting or reaping the maximum benefits, right? So you need to have a proper management strategy and necessary procedures and tools, right? You need to decide which workload belong in which cloud. As I mentioned that, uh, there is one workload, or one cloud vendor will have one specialty. Let's say Windows, right? Uh, Windows compute machines are very, very cheap there in Azure, right? So likewise, you need to achieve the optimal data resiliency, right? And you need to manage your API to achieve interoperability. That is really, really important, right? And you need to cover the migration of on-premise cloud to the on-premises services to the cloud. And whenever you're making modification, you need to ensure that they can run in the cloud environment, not just one, but in the other cloud environment as well, whenever you are migrating it to the other cloud. right? And then you need to specify rules, best practices for building and testing, running those application, right? Because this will interact with different cloud services of different cloud vendors. So you need to ensure that these rules are set properly. Okay, and the same goes for security control. Uh, you need to ensure that even if they are running in different cloud, you're getting the same level of security there. Okay. The major technology or the key technology that come in my mind when we talk about multi-cloud is container, right? Kubernetes container. This is the key. This is the key for multi-cloud, right? And container is nothing but a small file package. Uh, excuse me. It's a small file that package together all the application code with all the libraries and other dependencies that is required to run it, right? And uh, you know, uh, with container you can run the application out of the box regardless of the operating system or the hardware, right? And you your application is consistent, right, across the cloud. And it's like if you have created your app, I mean, if you have used Kubernetes and other open source technology, it will make ensure that it run properly in the other cloud as well, which support open source containerization. Yeah. And the next topic is about cloud storage, right? Uh, Definitely, when it comes to cloud storage, it adds flexibility and scalability. It's comparatively cheaper. There is no price for storing data into the cloud. However, whenever you are, taking data from the cloud back on-prem, right? Definitely, there is a charge attached to it, right? And you need to ensure that you're meeting all the privacy law of the different states, countries, and regions, right? You're storing your data nearest to the user, right? There could be multiple storage location, uh, that you can consider for keeping the data close to the user as possible, right? And no matter you know of where you are, the key principle for the storage is that your data should reside nearest to the user and it should meet the law of the land, right? It that is the data privacy or any other compliance that come into effect, right? Any questions so far? All right. Then this slide talk about monitoring, right? And when it comes to monitoring tool, as you know that it provide you a comprehensive view of your multi-cloud environment, right? And uh, you need to be familiar with a different management tool that different cloud vendor provide you, right? So that uh, you can optimize the services that you're using in your architecture, right? So that you can get the best out of it, right? Monitoring is really important, and there is a set criteria to evaluate monitoring, right? This has been defined by Gartner, by different cloud vendors as well, right? So I would really recommend that you should go through this formal criteria. There is a link attached here if you want. You can go to this Gartner criteria. It is really practical, I would say, right? I would request you to go through this link. Maybe I'm gonna send it later. Okay. Now, when it comes to multi-cloud, the VMware is the I would say, VMware is these. I would say you can call it servers, you can call it your machines or anything. It is something which is very much I would say very easy to which is built for rather multi-cloud, right? You gain visibility into multi-cloud environment by leveraging VM multi-cloud solution, right? From a central console, you can get a unified view. You can see the health of your instances of your computing machines, right? You can also see the security of all your application. It's just a single window that you get, right? And the best part is, you can use the central console to check the security of your application in the AWS environment, in the Azure environment, or in the Google environment, right? So it's a central console which you can use to track the health, to track the security of the application, irrespective of the cloud vendor that you are associated with. Okay. And again, you can accelerate software development through containers, right? As I mentioned, container is the key. You can leverage microservices that enable quick changes to the application, and Kubernetes is something which automate application deployment and management, right? I mean, you can definitely leverage these microservices. Any question that you want to ask with respect to hybrid cloud, multi-cloud? We spoke about challenges. We spoke about limitation. We spoke about how it works, what services are, the best, which are considered to be the best when it comes to hybrid cloud, multi-cloud environment. So anything you want to ask, anything you want to discuss on, this is a question answer session. I would try to, help you with all your queries.
Gaurav can help you with your certification questions as well, if you have any. Gaurav, I was curious, during the infancy of the online shopping days, we would go to different websites. But now that the online shopping companies have kind of matured, it's kind of consolidated, and, we use very few of them now. Do you see, what's your crystal ball in terms of hybrid clouds? Do you see a consolidation where, there will be one winner, or, like very few winners, or do you see a world where there will continue to be hybrid and there will maybe even more, clouds introduced and more sophisticated tools to kind of glue them together? What's your crystal ball?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I would say multi-cloud would be the future, right? Because every cloud claim that, every cloud provider or every cloud vendor claim that they are the best, right? Uh, and they always, give you a comparison that if you run your workload on-prem, it would be expensive, capex oriented, blah, blah, blah. Move to our cloud, you're going to save this much money, but the reality could be different, right? And there's a lock-in, right? And when we talk about the future, definitely multi-cloud is something that I can see, that I would see that would exist for a long run, right? Because no workload is similar, right? And one vendor will not meet all of your requirement. You need to be, compliant to different department or different compliance, right? That is one. Uh, you need to meet different regulatory compliance as well, right? You need to you have different, I would say, business need. Your application is unique in its own way, right? And there are new services which are being launched and by each and every cloud vendor, and they are highly competitive among themselves, right? I still remember when AWS was launched, right? They used to charge by an hour, right? And when Google was launched, they used to charge by seconds, right? And since there was a competition, AWS had no choice but to, change their pricing model. They also came with per second billing, right? So these top three vendors, at least, that is Google, AWS, and Microsoft, they are, highly competitive in one way or the other, right? And they try to beat their own competitor with innovative services and all. So yeah, they keep on they will keep on evolving, right? And I see that definitely it would be more of open source everywhere in each cloud, right? Which will make this portability really easy, and everything will be standardized, so that it meet the uh, demand of various industries, be it healthcare, be it insurance, be it banking. So it like it will keep on evolving, and this is the future that I see at the moment.